Let's get into some NBA though, Brett, because that'll be a little bit more interesting, I think, on Thursday because we have NBA and NHL actually having some ramifications as their seasons are coming to the end of the regular season and playoff implications and seeding is really mattering. MLB, April matters. April matters, but it's a long race. It's a marathon.
I agree. I mean, I think you have to be a little concerned if you're the Braves right now, sitting at 0 and 5, but it's certainly not the end of the world. Teams get hot, teams get cold. There's plenty of time to bounce back. But in the NBA, like you mentioned, Higgins, we are certainly winding down. And one of the races that I'm really intrigued about right now is the Pacific Division in the Western Conference. The Suns are actually leading that division, and I really don't see anyone catching them. The two obvious contenders would be the Lakers and the Clippers, but those teams are beat up. They rest their players. The Clippers just added DeMarcus Cousins and Rondo, and ironically, the Suns get the chance to play the Clippers on Thursday, Higgins. And the books think the Clippers are 5-point favorites, but I'm going to tell the books I think the Suns are the better team, and I'm going to take the 5 points and say thank you very much.
Hey, and the data says that's the right way to play it. Phoenix is leading the league in the NBA in terms of covering 32 and 17 on the season, Brett. And you were talking about races to end the season in the West, and I'm really interested to see who's going to end the NBA season at the top of this uh, against the spread total here because it was the Jazz for a while, but the Suns have come on strong. The Jazz aren't far behind, though. It's just the Suns are covering and covering and covering. So I agree. Hop on that bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I know we're going to talk about the Jazz game here in a second. Both of these teams are just money making machines this year. People in big cities like to bet on the Lakers, like to bet on the Clippers, like to bet on the Brooklyn Nets. No one's watching the Utah Jazz. No one's watching the Phoenix Suns. And sometimes that helps us out, Higgins.
And in Oregon, I am betting against the Portland Trailblazers. So maybe that helps for me. I haven't gotten to take a look at where the money is at, unfortunately. But the Jazz being the third best in the league against the spread. Now they're sitting right behind Memphis. They're technically tied. Memphis just has one less loss on the year. But the Jazz -7, they're 31 and 19 on the year against the spread. Portland, they're about 25 and 25. So the data says go with the Jazz. The Jazz are playing at home. I love it here. I mean, the Jazz, when they're at home and they're the favorite, they're 17 and 6 on the season.
Yeah, I mean that's a great stat right there, Higgins. I always like the Jazz at home just because of the altitude. Same with the Nuggets. Like I always think that's an advantage. I won't doesn't always mean I'll pull the trigger because these teams can lose at home. Anything can happen in a basketball game, but I do think it's like just a real advantage that is not accounted for enough. We see it in football. It's usually accounted in the Broncos spread, but I don't think it really is played in the same weight. Maybe outside of baseball and over under totals, but like in just spreads, I don't think it plays the same weight in the basketball games.
And the later into the season, the more effect it may have as these guys get more tired or dogged or have nagging injuries potentially from earlier in the season. It all adds up the longer these seasons go. So as we're getting into April, maybe getting into May, just keep that in mind. The altitude, though, Brett, I agree. In NFL, it's huge. I think you see it in hockey with the Avalanche, but I wouldn't say you necessarily see it with the Jazz or the Nuggets.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't looked into the hockey enough, so that would be an interesting one for me to look into as well. You see an extra run boosted at Rockies home games though. So
Oh
it
yeah, the
is.
over-unders are juiced up.
Yeah, so it is accounted for at times. Sometimes I just think it's overlooked. Higgins, before we jump to hockey, there's one more matchup that I think is important that we discuss. It's an NBA Finals rematch between the Lakers and the Heat. Obviously, this is not the dream matchup we wanted. No AD, no LeBron, but it's still an NBA Finals rematch. Miami minus 340 on the money line. I guess everyone knows LeBron's out.
Yeah, I guess everyone does know LeBron's out, so that's a fact. And the Heat at home, they typically play pretty well. I think that's where my money would be as well. The line's around 8.5, depending on what book you're typically looking at right now. I don't know if I can take that, so maybe at 340, that's a good parlay banter.
Yeah, definitely.
Parlay banker, sorry.
All good. I didn't even catch that. What did you say?
I said parlay banter.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's good parlay banter. I think it's a good parlay banker, parlay builder. Exactly. I like Miami. I think they're going to be motivated to go against the team that knocked them off in the finals, and it doesn't hurt that that team's also a little beat up.
Absolutely.